We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, Friday morning edition, wherever and however you're listening of the episode of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. And let me just say this. I hate when people do that really felt like March when it's November or December. Wednesday night in college hoops felt like freaking March. It's February 27th as I record. Probably most of you listening 27th or 28th. It freaking felt like March on Wednesday night. And really Tuesday night as well. We're going to recap it all. We're going to talk about all of the big stories. Michigan State, the buzzer beater, unbelievable. Kentucky basically winning on a buzzer beater. St. John's clinching the Big East title. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to do a long-winded bubble talk conversation. Georgia with a big win on Tuesday over Florida. Arkansas with a big win. Vandy with a big win. Oh, by the way, Wake Forest, Oklahoma, not so much. From there, we'll take a quick break, and we are going to have a very special guest. I teased it earlier in the week. I said one of the best coaches in college basketball is going to be joining us on the next episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. It is here as Will Wade will be joining the Aaron Torres Pod in just a few minutes. Will Wade, head coach, McNeese State. We talk about everything. It's a nice long interview. I actually spoke with him on Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon. They have just clinched another conference title. We talk about his future. We talk about NIL, where that's going. Will Wade is awesome, and we will wrap previewing a busy week in college hoops. Saturday, Auburn at Kentucky, Alabama, Tennessee, Iowa State, Arizona. It is going to be an awesome couple days in college hoops. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. First of all, make sure you're subscribed. Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day on YouTube. We have surpassed 50,000 subscribers. Big question is, how quickly can we get to 60? I think we can do it quick, but not without your support. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Also, Apple and Spotify as well. Wherever you get your podcast, the audio pod is available as well. Beyond that, you know what else we got to do? We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Okay, so Cauley Puffs, I've told you all about them at this point. Listen, we're about to hit March. Okay, you know what that means? That means a lot of sitting on the couch. That means a lot of watching basketball, maybe betting basketball. We may have a new betting partner rejoining us really in a couple days. But you know what it's also about? It's about eating healthy. So when you come out of March, you're not a total slob looking disgusting heading into beach season here in a couple months. And that's where Cauley Puffs comes in. Okay, so Cauley Puffs, as I told you, it is a family-owned company not far from where I live. Joey, a huge football fan, was sitting on the couch one day and just basically said, look, I need to start eating healthier. I need something my kids will like, but I need something that is delicious as well. And that's where he came up with Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease. The best part is they taste delicious. This is the healthy but delicious alternative to all of the crap in your grocery aisle. So make sure to check them out for yourself. For more information on Cauley Puffs, all you got to do, visit CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com. Also, you can find Cauley Puffs on Amazon. Just go to Amazon.com, search Amazon, whatever is already in your cart, just throw some Cauley Puffs in. I don't want to know what's in that cart, you disgusting, filthy slob, but throw some Cauley Puffs in. You're going to like them, trust me on that. By the way, before we get to the show, one quick announcement. With March coming, it is worth noting, the Aaron Torres Media Store, we got ourselves our Marches for Day Drinking t-shirts. This is a hot seller every February into March. Great for your conference tournaments, great for your NCAA tournament watch parties. If you're in a casino, if you're betting, if you're sitting on the couch, whatever, you know what else you're doing? You're drinking a cold beer. So our Marches for Day Drinking t-shirts are now available. AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. We bring them out every February. You guys love them. We always sell a ton. By the way, any sales go to the Aaron Torres Pod. We're going to be live in San Antonio for a full week. So listen, your support of the show, your support by picking up some merchandise, it really does go a long way to helping this show continue to grow. So get your March is for Day Drinking t-shirt. Shout out to my guy Aiden who designed that. It is a great shirt. Get yours now. With that said, it is a busy Thursday morning, afternoon, depending on where you are. College hoops was off the chains on Wednesday night. There is no more time to waste. So let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. Listen, there was no, in my opinion, like A+, like there was no like, oh my God, we got, by the way, even before we get into college hoops, been a crazy couple days across sports. And if it didn't feel like March, if we weren't getting to that moment in time where it's all college hoops all the time, we would hit on some other stuff. I saw after years, the NFL is finally putting a little chip in the ball so the refs don't need to spot first downs. I love that. Paul George is apparently quitting podcasting. So there's a lot of stuff going on outside college hoops, but Wednesday night felt like March. And because of it, I just think we got to rip through about 6, 7, 8 results. This is not one we're going to spend 15 minutes talking about a singular game, but let's just rip through some really, really, really big games, some really, really awesome results. Let's start with a couple schools that we probably haven't talked enough about. Michigan State traveling to Maryland on Wednesday night. I don't know how many people know this. This was a top 4 matchup in the Big Ten. Okay, so Michigan State is quietly in first place in that league. Maryland was quietly tied for third. For people who don't remember how the Big Ten tournament works, the top 4 seeds get a double bye into the quarterfinals on Friday. So you're talking about 2 teams that are playing for position, for playing for seeding, not only in the Big Ten tournament, but the NCAA tournament as well. This was an unbelievable game. It was a little bit of a low-scoring game. Some might call it a rock fight, but it ended on just an unbelievable play. I'll tell you a quick side story, and then we'll get to the sound. Was sitting there watching this game, just wanted to check these 2 teams out. Wife and the dog get home. I got to run to the store really quick. Michigan State's up by like 5 or 6 with probably 3 minutes to go. I'm like, with the way this game is going, we're probably okay to step out for just a few minutes. Took the dog to the store, picked up a few things. Well, I log onto my phone. I log onto social media, and I see that this is how the game ended.
Gillespie for 3. Kohler, no. Holloman looks the clock. Half court for the win. Oh! Oh, my goodness. Holloman from half court.
That sound courtesy of the Big Ten Network. We obviously cannot play video here for copyright reasons, so there is no video. YouTube, if you're listening, there was no video at all, but we are allowed to play sound. We had a buzzer beater, a half-court buzzer beater from Trey Holloman to win this game for Michigan State. An unbelievable finish, an unbelievable game. And I think really 2 teams that are kind of in the midst of an unbelievable season. First of all, Michigan State, like, I don't know. Again, I think everybody knows that they're in first place in the Big Ten. But what I love about Michigan State is that Tom Izzo, and we talked a little bit about this with Pitino the other day, there's so many older guys that are getting out of the business. There are so many older guys, by the way, that are still in but don't seem to have the same juice in this portal NIL era. I'm talking to you, Bill Self, talking to you, Mark Few. Well, Tom Izzo not only has Michigan State in first place in the Big Ten, but what's funny to me, it's basically the exact same team that he's had every year since he took the job in like 1996, okay? They don't shoot the 3 ball well. I think they shoot 29% of the 3 this season. They don't even attempt them. I looked it up this morning. 331st nationally in 3-point attempts. Second fewest of any power conference team behind only Seton Hall. But they rebound the crap out of the ball. They had 13 offensive rebounds in this game. On the season, top 3, top 5, somewhere in there in rebound margin. In other words, the amount of rebounds they get relative to the competition. So they went ahead and got the win. It's a big win. They are trending towards a Big Ten regular season title. We got to give Michigan State a ton of credit. You know, from the Maryland side of things, again, a team that we probably haven't talked about enough on this show. I don't even know how many people would know, but, you know, Maryland's quietly in the top 20 of the most recent AP poll. They had won 8 of their last 9, playing really good basketball. And what's kind of interesting about them, they play kind of 2 bigs, but they're both non-traditional bigs. They can kind of both pass, dribble, shoot. Derek Queen, who I think is slowly kind of rising up NBA draft boards. is a very, very, very talented player. The other big guy for Maryland, Julian Reese, you may know his sister, Angel Reese. So anyway, Maryland is going to be fine. I actually think they're a very good team, an underrated team. I think they're a team that ends up on that like 6 line of the NCAA tournament and could easily knock off a 3. But Michigan State and Maryland, Michigan State wins at the buzzer. Let's keep it going. Other big game on Wednesday night in college hoops that came down to the wire. Again, everything just felt so fun on Wednesday night in college hoops. But let's go ahead and get to the other big one. Not really the big one from the perspective of top 20 matchup or anything like this, but a game that came down to the wire, Kentucky at Oklahoma. So this one, notable for all the reasons that you already know. But Kentucky has been dealing with all sorts of injuries. We've talked about them. They've been up, they've been down. But listen, this is not a, what's wrong with Kentucky or Mark Pope. No. When you lose your starting point guard for 6 games, whatever it was, your best wing scorer, not really your best wing scorer, but a guy who is a double-figure scorer on the wing for 5 games with a wrist injury, your backup point guard isn't playing. I actually think Mark Pope has been doing an unbelievable job coaching this team. I mean, he is playing guys that he didn't expect to play at all this year, and they're like having to start and play like 30 minutes a game, okay? Well, I bring it up because they go on the road on Wednesday night. They face Oklahoma. Oklahoma coming off a very nice win against Mississippi State, kind of in desperation mode, kind of needed the big win. And this was a weird back and forth game. I saw my buddy Matt Jones, Kentucky Sports Radio, tweet out, it did in a lot of ways remind me of the Texas game. If you watch the Kentucky-Texas game, Kentucky was kind of in control. In the Texas game, Kentucky was in control for the first 36 and a half minutes and couldn't close out. This was one where it was probably about the first 34, 35 minutes where you just felt like Kentucky was clearly the better team. Kentucky clearly, was going to win this game. Then all of a sudden you look up and it's like, oh, Kentucky's down 2, Kentucky's down 4, Kentucky's back down 1, they're down 7, they're down whatever. I bring it up because it did come down to, much like the Michigan State Maryland game, 1 play, 1 bucket for the win. We're not going to play the video again, YouTube, if you're listening, but we will play the sound. Here is Otega Owe late in the game.
10 seconds remaining. Owe on Miles. Otega throws it up and in. Kentucky back in front. Fears the other way. Timer down to 3. Fears blocked. Kentucky.
Producer Matt, that looked really good. Good work, my man. Good work, my man. All right, so you just saw it. Otega Owe hits a bucket with about 5-6 seconds to go. Kentucky was up. They have to rally late, but they get a big win. Okay, so listen, this is one from the Kentucky side of things. It was never like if they lost this game, the season's whatever. Like, no, we talked about it a month ago. We talked about it 3 weeks ago. They had an NCAA tournament resume basically probably 3 weeks ago, right? 2 wins over Tennessee. The win over Florida, you have the wins against Gonzaga and Duke and all these teams out of conference. So it was never like if you lose this game, blah, 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 blah. But I will also say, like, if you do lose this game, if you're Kentucky, 1, you finally got your guys back. Now, clearly they're not at full strength. And obviously Jackson Robinson isn't, could be back out after, after this game. But I just bring it up because, if you lose this game, you have now lost 3 of your last 5 overall, or I guess it would be 3 of your last 4 overall, excuse me. And 5 of your last 8, 6 of your last 8, something like that. And it's just kind of a lot of negative vibes kind of going into the final home stretch of the season. But you get the win. And what really stood out to me about this win is a couple things from the Kentucky side of things. One, first of all, I think this is that just the resilience of this team. We've talked about it a ton, but we just talked about the injuries, right? Your starting point guard's been out. Your backup point guard's been out. Jackson Robinson, one of your elite wing scorers, has been out. They both come back. They're playing less than 100%. Amari Williams hurts. I believe it was his ankle. I missed all of it because the Texas A&M game went 2 hours too long, but that's another conversation for another day. But I just bring it up because the resiliency of this team. Guys are in and out of the lineup. By the way, let me say this. The resiliency of the coaching staff. Again, I think Mark Pope is doing as good of a job as you could possibly be doing given the circumstances, okay? Listen, Mark Pope's not going to win SEC Coach of the Year. It's probably going to go to Bruce Pearl. I guess there's a world where maybe Todd Golden can win it. Dennis Gage should be in the conversation. Mark Byington from Vanderbilt should be in the conversation, whatever. But I just bring it up because to me, I do think that Mark Pope deserves the credit that he probably isn't getting enough of on a national scale. Like I said, Travis Perry, Trent Noah, Colin Chandler, these are guys that are not supposed to be playing this year. They've had to play big roles. Now other guys are coming back. You're trying to fit pieces in and out. I don't think he gets enough credit. By the way, I see Laren in the chat. Laren sent me a great question last night, so let me address it. He asked me about Otega Oweh. First of all, let me say this. Otega Oweh, man, I was not familiar with your game. Okay, so bottom line is, listen, we do all sorts of portal stuff all winter long or all spring long. We talk so much portal, probably more than any show on the college hoop side, maybe anywhere. And as Kentucky was putting together their roster, really liked Damari Williams, really liked Lamont Butler, really liked Jackson Robinson, really liked Kobe Brea. But Otega Oweh was kind of the guy I'm like, well, he's kind of athletic, but he's not a great this, and he doesn't do that, and he was this, but he wasn't that. Man, I think, if anything, last year was an indictment on the coaching staff sitting on the other sidelines that isn't Mark Pope, that's Porter Moser and his staff, because Otega Oweh played at Oklahoma the last 2 years. By the way, yes, he got booed every time he touched the ball over the course of this game. But you just talk about an unbelievable performance on Tuesday night, Wednesday night. 18 straight points to end the game for Otega Oweh. 18 straight points, 28 points overall. And I think what stands out to me about that is a few things. One is the fact that I do think you officially have your go-to guy, your go-to dude for March, okay? Because that was the big thing early in the season with Kentucky. I felt like, do they have that guy that can consistently get you 17, 18, 19 points per game, or is it just going to be all season long by committee? One day it's going to be Andrew Carr. One day it's going to be Lamont Butler. One day it's going to be Kobe Brea. One day it's going to be this guy. One day it's going to be that guy. Well, Otega Oweh is playing like an all-SEC first-team member, and I do think like there's something to he is the alpha of this team as far as the scoring is concerned. I actually think they have a few alphas. And now he's your go-to guy as other guys get healthy around him. Now you don't have to rush back Jackson Robinson. Now you don't have to play Lamont Butler 36 minutes a game because Otega Oweh is playing like an all-SEC first-team member. By the way, I actually did not see this. I guess Oklahoma fans were chanting, he's a traitor. He's a traitor. I mean, he's not a traitor. Your coaching staff kind of isn't getting the job done. I mean, there's no other way to put it. That producer Matt just sent me that note. I mentioned this in a tweet on Monday night, by the way. I think everything you need to know about Oklahoma, and we'll get to kind of their bubble stuff in a minute. How about this? Otega Oweh is playing at an all-SEC first-team level after leaving Oklahoma. Milos Uzan, who plays at Houston, is like one of the best point guards in college basketball. He was at Oklahoma last year. You didn't make the tournament with those two guys. They both leave. They both go to good situations and are immediately playing at an all-conference level. That's not a good sign for the Oklahoma coaching staff, and we'll get into Oklahoma and their bubble situation in a minute. But really quickly, to put a bow on this, I think Otega Oweh is playing at an all-SEC level, but I think just as important as playing at an all-SEC level, you know what else is really important as far as I'm concerned? Is the fact that, listen, there's a conversation to be had about what does it mean for next year? What does it mean for the possibility of him returning? Listen, I don't follow the mock draft boards every single day. He looks like an NBA player to me, and this was the question that Laren in the chat sent over the course of the last couple of days, is like, that guy to me looks like an NBA player. And I do kind of think that if he declares he's going to get in workouts and people are going to be like, oh, he's actually way better than we thought he was. But the counter to that is he very much could come back to college basketball next year and probably be like a preseason first-team All-American. And so that's putting a little bit of the cart before the horse. We don't have to discuss all that. But, I mean, this is a guy that, to me, all SEC, but there's room to improve. 34% from three, that could get better. You bring him back as a 16, 17-point-a-game scorer, can kind of help with some of those freshmen develop all of that. So want to give credit where it's due. He was awesome. He beats his former school, Kentucky, just a back-on-track kind of win Oklahoma is on the bubble. We are going to talk about the bubble in just 1/2 second. Before we get to the bubble, though, it is worth noting one other thing that happened on Wednesday night in college hoops, because we've talked about this one a little bit. And I don't really feel as though we have to spend too much time. There's no new ground to cover. It's Big Rick energy. It's Rick Pitino. It's the St. John's Red Storm, okay? So we've talked about this team over and over again. We did a conversation about Rick Pitino. Is that guy the GOAT of college basketball, okay? But at the same time, with Rick Pitino, with St. John's, had to close it out, right? Very manageable schedule at Butler, at home against Seton Hall. A win on Wednesday night would give them a share of the Big East regular season title. A win and a Creighton loss would give them the Big East title outright. Well, they get the win. They are Big East co-champs. They now just have to win one of their final 2 games to be Big East champions. Story's incredible. Listen, probably next week or the week after, we'll do my national coach of the year, my national this, my national that. Rick Pitino's the national coach of the year. I'm sorry. With due respect to Bruce Pearl, that was a team that we all thought was a top 15 team coming into the year. That was a team that, won the SEC conference tournament last year. Like, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I hate to say it, but to me, as great as that story is, as great as what Florida's doing is, as great as what, Houston's doing is, I don't know how you can give it to anybody other than Rick Pitino. I mean, this is a guy, and we've talked about it, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on redoing the whole story again and again. Took a dead program. I mean, St. John's was as dead can be. We didn't care nationally. You didn't care nationally. They were playing all of their games in that crappy on-campus arena, Carnesecca Arena. Nobody was paying attention. I said it at the time. It was almost like they were hiding, like they were trying to pretend like they didn't play basketball because they didn't want to see anyone to see how bad the product was. Well, you bring in Rick Pitino, it's completely changed. And I don't think there's much else to add other than that, listen, he should be National Coach of the Year. If they win on Saturday against Seton Hall, they are the Big East outright champs. It's the best story in college basketball this year. I think Rick Pitino's National Coach of the Year. And I will add 2 other quick things. One, Kadari Richmond did play on Wednesday. Why is that notable? Because Rick Pitino, in his true Rick Pitino fashion, did you see what he said after the UConn game? He said it's a double groin pull for Kadari Richmond. And I'm paraphrasing now, but he basically said, I don't know how he's even walking right now. I don't even know how he played. I'll tell you, I've covered Rick Pitino for years. He is not one that's short on hyperbole. Of course, Kadari Richmond played on Wednesday night. Of course, he played at a really high level. It is worth noting Aaron Scott went out with injury. Aaron Scott is a very important player for them. Now, sounds like a little bit of a knee deal, a knee bang up, but yeah, it doesn't sound like it is going to be an extended thing. I'll tell you what, producer Matt, we're going a little bit long on this opening segment. Let's take a quick break, come back, and we're going to whip through some very important bubble stuff. Indiana with a win. We're going to talk Arkansas. There's a lot to discuss from the bubble, so we'll make that an 8, 10, 12-minute conversation. And then from there, we got to welcome in the General Will Wade. We'll take a quick break. Be right back. What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting. Sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. This is a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at Firebox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly, not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to Fioboc.com. That's F-I-O-B-O-C. Fioboc.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to Fioboc. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at Fioboc. Thank you to Fioboc. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So, by the way, producer Matt, we can run that Filebuck ad again leading into Will Wade. Will Wade will be joining us about 10 minutes from now. Will Wade. Oh, when I tell you he's got a lot to say about his team, about the state of college basketball, you are going to want to stay tuned. Will Wade's the man. Love having him on the pod. Had him on this pod around this time last year. And I have a feeling if he's interested in leaving McNeese State, he is going to have no shortage of opportunities. They just clinched a second straight league title. So about 10 minutes from now, Will Wade will join us here on the Aaron Torres pod. With that said, listen, I was going to talk just Arkansas, and then I was like, you know what? Let's just do a big picture. Who are the winners and losers of the bubble conversation from this week? Because there is a lot. There was a lot of stuff that happened on really Tuesday and Wednesday night. So let's go ahead and dive in. We'll be longer and shorter on some. And I see Luke Shoemaker in the comments asked about the Georgia Bulldogs. So let's just start with them. Tuesday night, Georgia, they beat Florida. I mean, listen, I can make fun of Mike White all I want. You know, I've been known to maybe call him mediocre Mike White every now and again. But I will say this. That's as good of a win as you can get in college basketball right now. They beat the Florida Gators at home. Wild game, by the way. And it was the true Mike White experience. They were up by 26 at one point in the first half. I believe Florida at one point went on a 17-0 run. This is the Mike White experience. Is they get big leads. They tend to blow them. Sometimes they find a way. Sometimes they don't. But listen, I don't know what else to say. This is a mega win for Georgia. And I'll take it a step further. It's a pseudo-mega win for the SEC because I do think of all those SEC teams that are squarely on the bubble, Georgia probably had the most work to do. They came into this week, you know, really no wins of note, basically like in the last month. I mean, their two previous SEC wins. Remember, they started 2-1 in the SEC. They start 2-1 with wins over Kentucky and Oklahoma. Well, Oklahoma's not playing well. And then how about this? Since the Oklahoma win on January 11th, their wins were against South Carolina and LSU. So this was a team that desperately needed a win. They get it. And I will say, I do think they're one that does still have a little bit of work to do. They have a very manageable final three at Texas, at South Carolina, Vanderbilt at home. It's actually pretty similar to what Arkansas has. We'll talk about Arkansas in a second. But from the Georgia side of things, listen, I do think as Georgia sits right now at 17-11, 5-10 overall in the SEC, I think probably needs to go 2-1 in that stretch because the bottom line is they have one great win in the out of conference that is against St. John's. Yes, Mike White freaking beat St. John's. It was a weird game in the Bahamas. St. John's couldn't close out. It's a great win, but outside of that, they don't have a ton of great wins outside of the conference. And so to me, it feels as though they're not in the situation that Oklahoma's in. They're not in the situation that some of these other teams are in that actually they have great wins out of conference. So to me, Georgia needs probably to go 2-1 in their next three. If they're 19-12 going into the SEC tournament, I think they'll be okay. If they're 18-13, you probably have to win at least one game in the SEC tournament. But credit to Georgia, that was just a game that you absolutely needed to win. You absolutely get it. We're going to bounce all over, but let's go to Wednesday night now. And I think I'll try to keep them in order as best I can, producer Matt. The Indiana Hoosiers hosting the Penn State Nittany Lions. By the way, kind of an interesting note on this. I didn't even realize the Big Ten tournament is only, I believe, bringing 15 of their 18 teams or 14 of their 18 teams. And so Penn State's just fighting to get to the Big Ten tournament. But Indiana is all of a sudden quietly fighting to get into the NCAA tournament. Yes, after Mike Woodson retired a few weeks ago. I don't know how many people know this, but Indiana is 3-1 in their last 4 games. That's kind of crazy. Their 2 best wins of the season have come in this stretch. They won at Michigan State. We talked about Michigan State being in first place in the Big Ten. Also on top of that, not only beat Michigan State, but they beat Purdue on Sunday at home. And so those are 2 great wins. This was a game that you couldn't lose. They don't lose to Penn State. And now all of a sudden, Indiana is kind of in this weird spot where they're actually in pretty good shape to go to the NCAA tournament. They entered this week in Joe Lunardi's first 4 out. And by the way, I know, everybody likes to tell me that Joe Lunardi's not the most accurate bracketologist. Okay, I get it, but he's the industry standard. So we're going to use Joe Lunardi. If you want to use some random website that predicts it better, whatever, I don't really care. I'm going to use Joe Lunardi's bracket. He had Indiana as the first 4 out. And what's kind of interesting about Indiana's schedule or Indiana's resume, it's not great. It honestly is not terrible either. 14 or they're what are they? 17, 18, and 11. They have 11 losses. All of their losses are in quad 1. So they have no bad losses. Like, we're going to talk about Wake Forest in a minute, who has a couple terrible losses. Indiana actually has no terrible losses on their resume. They now have a couple really good wins. But I think what's going to be interesting with them is a few things. Is one, first of all, they got kind of screwed on the schedule. They have now a West Coast road trip. I mean, I don't know how many teams have to fly west this weekend, but Indiana is one of them. So their final 3 at Washington on Saturday, then at Oregon, then a quick turnaround. They play Ohio State on the final day of the regular season. And so Indiana kind of got screwed on the schedule, but you got to probably go 2-1 in those games. First of all, you got to beat Washington. Washington's terrible. By the way, I told you in May they'd be terrible when they got the great Osabor kid that everybody was freaking out about. I'm like, he's not that good. Anyway, Washington's terrible. You got to win that game. Oregon, if you lose at Oregon, nobody's going to punish you for it. And I think Ohio State's kind of in an interesting spot because Ohio State is on the bubble as well. But credit to Indiana. They got the win. No terrible losses. They still have work to do. But I think they're probably on the right side of the bubble right now. You just got to take care of business. Really quick, let's go back to the SEC. Wednesday night, I don't even know if I would call them on the bubble. Vandy and Texas A&M. So Vandy goes to Texas A&M, final score 86-84. This was an awful game to watch. A&M, listen, first of all, there's some buzz about Buzz Williams and where he may and may not be after this year. Just, kind of keep an eye out for that. But I bring it up because these Texas A&M games, I said it the other day, a Texas A&M game finishing in 2 hours, that's like seeing a unicorn in the wild. It's just never going to happen. And so this game, the Kentucky-Oklahoma game, was in the 3rd TV timeout by the time they got to this game. But Texas A&M loses. I don't think it's a huge indictment on Texas A&M. That's another conversation for another day. But I do think it's really important for Vandy. Vandy, to me, I actually believe at this point is now, I would say, off of the bubble. At this point, it is, to me, I think they're kind of in an interesting spot. They're 19-9 overall. We talked about them a minute ago, or we talked about some of these teams a minute ago. I don't know that they have a ton of great wins in the out of conference, but right now they're 7-8 in SEC play and have some great wins in the SEC. At A&M is a great win. Tennessee at home is a great win. Kentucky at home is a great win. And so right now, in my opinion, they're not really, I don't think, on the bubble. Again, 19-9 overall. And what's more interesting about them, they actually have some chances, in my opinion, to knock some people off the bubble. We talked about the fact that they played Georgia late in the year at Georgia to close the regular season. I think Georgia probably needs to win that game to get into the NCAA tournament. They host Arkansas in the middle of next week. Arkansas, I don't want to say has to win that game. We're going to get to Arkansas in a minute. But Vandy, to me, they're in really good shape. 19 wins. I say if you get to 20 in the regular season, you're going to be in the NCAA tournament because of those really solid wins at A&M, Kentucky at home, Tennessee at home. Credit to the Commodores. Mark Byington, another one like Mark Pope. He's not going to win SEC Coach of the Year, but what he is doing at Vandy, in my opinion, has been phenomenal. Really quickly, a couple other bubble results. Wake Forest, my man. I don't even know what to say. I think it's kind of over for Wake. Wake at home lost to Virginia on Wednesday night. And listen, with Wake, they're kind of the opposite of all these SEC teams, right? Is that with Wake Forest, it's, you don't have a ton of great opportunities, but you just can't lose to bad teams. Well, in their last 4 games, they have lost to Florida State. Terrible. Their coach resigned. At NC State, I love Kevin Keats, but they're terrible. 11-17, 4-13 in the ACC. And they lost at home to Virginia on Wednesday night. This team's on the wrong side of the bubble. They're 19-9 overall, but unlike Vanderbilt, who we just talked about, they don't play in a great league. They don't have a ton of great wins. They do have a very nice win over Michigan. in the out of conference, but that's really kind of it. They also took a weird loss. Let me see here. What was the weird loss that they took? I don't know. They took a weird loss somewhere. And like, it's just over. Like to me, and let me say this, is like Steve Forbes seems like a great guy. If you remember, Wake Forest was the only power conference job that opened in 2020. That was the year of COVID shut down the NCAA tournament and nobody was hiring and firing anybody. Well, Steve Forbes, like, I thought was going to be a great coach for Wake Forest. And his story is kind of incredible. He was with Bruce Pearl at Tennessee, was kind of fired with all that barbecue gate and all that stuff. Had to go to the junior college ranks, had to grind his way back up, went to a couple NCAA tournaments at East Tennessee State. I don't want to say it hasn't worked, but this is now 3 out of the last 4 years that they have gone into late February, just needing to just take care of business. And they were in the NCAA tournament, just basically don't lose bad games. And they've lost bad games. I remember it was in 2022. I was at the Final Four in New Orleans. That was the year, if you remember, Duke and Carolina played at the Final Four. And I remember I had Steve Forbes on my Fox Sports radio show, and he was just like, dude, look, 4 of our losses were to North Carolina and Duke. Look at how good those losses were. So you don't get in that year. Last year, do you remember last year what happened? Last year, they beat Duke in the middle of February. That was the famous court storming game. Kyle Filipowski getting dragged by his ankle, whatever. They win that game, and it was basically like they're in the tournament. And then they completely fell apart, and now they're doing it again. So I don't really have much else to add on Wake. I feel bad for that. That's a great fan base. When I was a kid, Wake Forest had Tim Duncan. Then they had Chris Paul. Those days are long gone. All you had to do, don't lose at home to Virginia. Don't lose on the road to NC State. They're completely falling apart. A couple other quick bubble results. Ohio State beat USC late on Wednesday night. Ohio State on the right side of the bubble right now. Crazy resume. Some great out-of-conference wins. Remember, they beat Kentucky on a neutral. They beat Texas on a neutral. The win-loss record isn't great, but the computers like them. I think they're on the right side of the bubble. And then we kind of talked about it. Oklahoma, they're kind of a weird team because they lose to Kentucky on Wednesday night. I think if they had beaten Kentucky, it's kind of hard to make the argument that they shouldn't be in the NCAA tournament, especially because of the fact that not only would they have beaten Kentucky, but they just beat Mississippi State the other day. But what's weird about Oklahoma's resume, and this is what they've done under Porter Moser, really good in the out of conference, not quite as good once the conference games have started. And right now they're sitting at 4-11 in league play. Again, I really think that a win over Kentucky probably would have gotten them in. But the issue becomes with the Oklahoma Sooners is really kind of multifold. Terrible in the league play. They were really good in out of conference. They beat Arizona. And by the way, all their wins are kind of have asterisks. I don't know how to say that. But would have had asterisks if they had, if the committee actually looked at teams then versus now. But like they beat Arizona when Arizona was no good. Well, that one keeps getting better and better. They beat Louisville after Louisville lost its best big man to a season-ending injury, but the win counts the same. And they beat Michigan in the out of conference. So Oklahoma, I think, would have been in if they had beaten Kentucky. They now have at Ole Miss, Missouri, and Texas on the road. I don't know what you got to do. I think you got to probably go at least 1-2 and win a game at the SEC tournament. I still think they have work to do. I don't know if 18-14 gets them in, even if with those great wins. I think you got to go 2-3 if you include a win and a loss at the SEC tournament. But Oklahoma on the wrong side of the bubble. Mentioned Texas. Texas, I think, is definitely on the wrong side of the bubble after losing to Arkansas. But let's really quickly get into Arkansas. By the way, Will Wade will be joining us here momentarily. Did not think this bubble segment would go so long, but darn it, Torres has a lot to say. March is here. I got to talk college hoops. Okay, so Arkansas. So let's talk about it. Wild game. Weird game. Final score at Bud Walton Arena. Arkansas wins in overtime in this game. 86-81 is the score. Just a lot. First of all, Arkansas, Adu Thiero is out with this knee injury. Now, we're all hoping it's okay. The school actually announced no surgery is required, so that's a good thing. But Arkansas now down. Their 2 top scorers on the season. Adu Thiero is their top rebounder. But what was wild about this game was if you watched it, Arkansas was in control for like 90% of it. They were up 12 at halftime. They were up 12 with 7 minutes to go. And then if you were watching, You saw what happened. And they were talking about on the broadcast. Texas just basically kept running the same ISO play for Trey Johnson, and he was cooking MFers in Budwell and Arena. Okay, see, I edited myself there. I'm not gonna, I know there's children that listen to this show, but Trey Johnson was cooking dudes. 39 points for Trey Johnson. By the way, broke Kevin Durant's single game freshman scoring record at Texas. It's crazy because I remember the game that Kevin Durant went for 37. If you're old enough, Kevin Durant had this iconic game. It was a Big Monday game when Big Monday used to matter in college hoops at Oklahoma State. Goes for 37. Well, Trey Johnson broke that record. But the story to me is Arkansas. Listen, first of all, I know Calipari doesn't get credit for anything, but they're having a great February right now. They're 5-3 overall. Their only losses at Auburn, at Texas A&M, Alabama at home. 3 teams that were in the top 10 at the time. 2 teams that could be number 1 seeds in the tournament. And they had a chance to win all of them, okay? By the way, the Auburn game, we know Big Z went 0 for 10 from the field. If he goes, 2 for 10, they probably win that game. But they're playing really well right now. But I also think there's a few variables with them. One, what is the status of Adu Thero? Listen, I've talked to people. I've asked about it. It's not season ending. That's good. The problem is, can you get him back really in time for the end of the regular season, but in time to ramp him up for hopefully a tournament run? Because he is a key piece to what they do. And I think that is going to be the number one X factor with Arkansas, is that basically, can you get him healthy in time? Because you need him to make a run. I think you also kind of need him down this home stretch because it's a weird thing. Like I think if you're an Arkansas fan, you should feel really good right now about where your team is and where they could go in March. Again, they've quietly won 5 of their last 8. Only 3 losses were to top 10 teams. But the counter to that is I do still think you have to close. Now, I'll be honest. I think if you beat South Carolina on Saturday, I think to me that probably puts you in the tournament. At that point, you would be overall 18-11, 7-9 in the SEC. As crazy as it sounds, 7-9 with a win at Kentucky, a sweep of Texas, a win over Missouri. I think that's probably enough to get you into the NCAA tournament. Plus, remember, you have a win over Michigan in the out-of-conference. Close with Vandy on the road and also Mississippi State at home. And so I just bring it up because to me, that feels like, I think 1 and 2 probably gets you in the tournament, but I think the bigger picture is, can you get Adu Thero healthy? So I was going to go long on Arkansas, but I've been long on everything, and we got to get to Will Wade. But if you're Arkansas, I think a win over South Carolina probably unofficially clinches things for you. I don't think a loss at home to Mississippi State or a loss at Vandy is going to hurt you. But right now, there's two key things. Beat South Carolina, get Adu Thero healthy. Because if you get Adu Thero healthy, you can play with anybody. I mean, I even had Kentucky fans in my mentions on Wednesday night saying, wow, this is a different team since they came to Rupp Arena. This is a team that can do damage in March, but you got to get healthy. All right, I have gone on long enough. This is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, star of the show, man, oh man, Will Wade, the legend, the icon. This is a guy, you need to stick around for this interview, okay? Because Will Wade, just, he's a guy that he's just going to be real with you. What is going on in college hoops? What's working? What's not? Not only his team, but also, not to mention his team as well, but also the state of college basketball, NIL, portal, what's next for him. We'll take a quick break. Will Wade joins us next. What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting. Sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. It's a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at Firebox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly. Not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to Fioboc.com. That's Fioboc. Fioboc.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to Fiobok. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at FIOBOC. Thank you to Fiobok. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres. All right, joining me via Zoom. We did this around this time last year where America found out that Torres has been to Lake Charles, Louisiana, but only the casinos. Never to McNeese State University, which has just clinched its second straight Southland title. Coach Will Wade, man, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing well. We're actually not that far from the casinos, so
I know.
it's not a far drive.
The problem is, once you get to
Problem is getting you out of the casino.
Yes, you get lost and, you take a wrong turn and then you're there for 3 days and you don't even know what happened. So I get it. But first off, man, first of all, in all seriousness, congratulations. Second straight Southland title. I think everybody's kind of wrapping their arms around college hoops right now on a national scale. Tell us a little bit about your team, what you're doing. Maybe do you feel like things are different this year than last year? Would be curious for anything that America needs to know about the Cowboys, the Bayou Bandits, as they can see on your shirt right now.
Well, we won it last year. We kind of came out of nowhere. We hadn't been very good. This year, we were building off of last year. We played a much tougher non-conference schedule this year. We played at Alabama. We played Mississippi State and Tupelo. It was supposedly a neutral court, but it wasn't very neutral when you play there. So we've got a different team. Last year we were led by really one guy, Wells, who was the conference player of the year, conference newcomer of the year. This year we've got way more balance. We've got 7 guys that score 7.5 points or more a game. We just have a lot more balance, a lot more ways that we can that we can beat you this season. Now, there's some stuff that we were better at last season than we are this year too. But our numerics are better. Our numerics are higher than at any point than they were last year, just in terms of KenPom and some of that sort of stuff. So we've got some pretty good stuff. And look, we got to finish it off. We've got a tough road trip here to end the league schedule. Then we've got the league tournament, and everybody in our league's gotten better. That's been a challenge, and it's been good. But everybody in our league's gotten better. I think a lot of people in the league were kind of, woe is me if we win the league. We're going to be in the play-in game, 16 seed. And then last year when we got a 12, a lot of schools and a lot of teams were like, all right, maybe we can do this. So everybody's gotten better. So the league tournament's going to be very, very challenging to win. But we do host it, and we get a double bye to the semifinals. So it gives us a good opportunity. But we got to make it happen.
So that's really interesting, and I don't want to. I don't want to give you too much credit or disparage anybody else, but it sounds like kind of like a rising tide lifts all boats kind of deal where they saw the success that you had. And I don't want to do the cliche, like, why not us, but it kind of became why not us across the league.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know about that. I think it was just, we are who we are. Everybody who wins it gets in the play-in game and gets a 16 seed. And, if we win the play-in game in Dayton, that's great. Then we go get waxed by the 1 seed. I think we've been in the play-in game like 4 of the 5 years. I think it just gives we've got 5 teams in the top 200 of KenPom right now. We're in the top 100, top 75 really. But we've got 4 others that are between basically 180 and 195, which is really good for our league. The year before we got in it, I think Corpus won it. They were 118, and they played Northwestern State, who was in the 130s or 140s in the championship game. So it's just the league's gotten better. We have a lot better teams. We have really, really good coaching, and I think everybody just sees an opportunity now that, hey, if you invest in basketball, you invest in men's basketball, you can get a return on that investment where maybe before they didn't feel that the return was quite as good as the investment would be. The ROI wasn't as good.
No, I get it. Let me ask you a question. I was watching you guys the other night, the game that you guys clinched the conference title, and I found it interesting. I mean, we know how great of a recruiter you are, all that, but I was watching. You got guys from Syracuse, Ole Miss, Brandon Murray, who was with you at LSU, then Georgetown, Ole Miss, whatever, ASU. It might be like the very cliche question, but like, how do you get all those guys to buy in, right? Because they're coming from the high major level. I don't want to, again, speak for anybody or whatever, but I assume everybody thinks they're going to come to McNeese and think they're going to be a star. But, I saw what I see from all Will Wade teams, a lot of ball movement, a lot of, team communication, stuff like that. And I'm just curious because you obviously have accumulated a lot of talent, but you and your staff are coaching it up as well.
Yeah, well, I got to get good players to overcome the coaching. So
Whoa.
I always say 5-star players, 3-star coaching. It's still equal to win. That's the way it
Sure.
works. But look, we've got talented kids, and you just demand it of them. Look, I hit them between the eyes. I tell them, hey, this is what we expect. This is what if you can meet these standards, this is what will happen. If you don't meet these standards, then you're going to leave it to chance. And a lot of that stuff, if you have difficult conversations, honest conversations with people, they understand, hey, this is where it is, and this is why I am where I am. And, it all comes back around. Copeland, who starts for us at point guard, the transfer from Syracuse, who you mentioned, he hardly played early in the year, a couple of games. He didn't even play, and now he's our starting point guard because he came around. And we've had Murray was starting for us early in the year. He had some injuries and he was out for a while, and so we were winning. So we just kind of stuck with what we've been doing. But he's obviously a starter. But we've got a lot of good players. It creates good competition for practice, good competition every day to do what you're do your job, execute your responsibilities fully, and so gives us a level of accountability. Within the team. Now, if I'm being transparent, like I really don't like playing all these guys. I'd rather play 7 or 8 guys. We play 9 guys. It's a little bit much. In my opinion, I like playing 7 really with an 8th that's kind of ready to go. We won we came in like top 3 in the SEC one year and basically played 6 guys. We had like 4 of the top 5 guys in minutes in the SEC one year. We just played 6 guys, and whatever. I prefer that method of doing things, but this team's built a little bit different, and we've got 9 guys that deserve to play, and so that's what we do.
So let me ask you, because that's an interesting thought process here, is like, in this world of NIL, and not really NIL, but more portal of like, if guys don't play, they just want to leave, It feels like it's a big talking point in college basketball right now of like, how do you build your roster? And I'll just use a quick example, not saying he did it right or wrong, but when John Calipari got to Arkansas this offseason, he basically said, I had too many guys at Kentucky last year. I'm basically bringing in 9 playable players. Then a guy gets hurt, is out for a year. Now he's down to 8, but it's kind of working for him. And I'm just curious, how much can you plan for that? How much can you not plan for that? Because it's like one of those deals where, like I said, I can't speak to what's going on in McNeese, but I know that's a big talking point, is like nobody really needs 13 scholarships anymore. If you have too many guys sitting at the end of the bench, everybody's just mad. So what is like that process of building things out in April and May? So, so you have that, the right balance come December, January, February, et cetera.
Yeah, I do think you need 13 scholarships. Now, I always tell our staff this, and they'll probably get mad I'm saying this, but depth is overrated for games, but underrated for practice.
Fair.
You need good players for practice. Like if you're going to have competitive practices and make it through the year, like you need good players. Now you probably need 10 playable guys, and then somebody's going to get banged up during the year, and then there's going to so then if you get 10 playable guys, you'll end up with 8 on game day, most game days. And then your staff's got to have 9 and 10 ready to go when all 10 are ready, and you've got to do a good job. You got to do a good job with those guys. But once again, I think it's just being transparent with them. Like I tell them, like, this is what it is. This is how it's going to be. You want more, do this. If you want less, keep doing what you're doing.
Sure.
And so this is how it is, and take it or leave it.
Well, and I was going to ask too, as a follow up to that, is it feels like, because especially with college hoops, all these kind of older coaches leaving, feeling like, quote unquote, we don't have control, or it's a player for sport. You're a guy that feels like you found that balance. Is it just as obvious and and apparent as you got to be honest, like the days of promising things in recruiting and then kids showing up and not delivering on that is like, because it just feels like I said, the older generation that's largely getting out now. It's like, oh, we have no control. It's like, I don't know. Will Wade seems to have it relatively figured out. There's a lot of young guys having success across, the SEC, the Big Ten, et cetera. So is that really what it just comes down to, is transparency and honesty and just not being around the bush?
Yeah, I don't think we got it. I don't have it figured out by any means. But I mean, look, I think it all boils down to communication. And the kids today, I mean, you can say they're different, they're this, they're that. They're not that much different, but you do have to communicate with them. And you've got to tell them, hey, this is what's up. And then show them examples and show them what you want and say, hey, more of this, less of this. And so I think that a lot of the other stuff is just a cop out.
Sure.
You've got to take the time to communicate with your guys, to spend time with your guys where they understand, hey, this is where I stand, this is what it is. And we'll do that. And sometimes it's honest. I mean, I told one of my kids, I said, man, look, I thought you were going to be better. I misevaluated. I screwed it up. We'll get through this year. We'll make it as good as it can be, and I'll help you out and find you a better fit. I know, you're not a good fit for me. Like, I'm not good for you. You're not good for me. I didn't know that. I screwed it up. And it's my fault. I mean, I'm the head coach. I'm the one who makes the decisions on who comes here and who doesn't come here. And so, I've told a kid that, and he plays for us. He comes off the bench, but I told him, I said, this just ain't good for you. It's not good for you. It's not good for me, but we're going to make it work as best we can this year. And then we're going to find you somewhere it's my mission to, we're going to graduate you from here, and we're going to find you somewhere that's better for you. And, he appreciates it. You don't have to like it. And so, I tell our kids all the time, I believe there's a big difference between, being hurtful and harmful. Some of the stuff I say is going to hurt.
Sure.
When I talk to you, it's going to hurt because it's going to be the truth, and one of the kids says, man, coach, you don't have to say the truth like that every time. But no, I mean, you do. But I'm never going to do anything to harm anybody. You may have to have hurtful conversations, but we're never going to do anything to harm anybody. We've redshirted kids who we didn't think were going to play as much. I gave them the option to redshirt this year, different things like that, because, harming them would be knowing they're not going to play much and playing them 4 minutes a game. Having a hurtful conversation is, hey, you're not going to play much right now, but I'm not going to harm you. So I'm going to give you the option to redshirt. So we have a lot of, try to keep that in mind, that we never want to do anything that's going to harm a player long term. And sometimes we are in tough spots, and you got to admit, hey, just like you want your kids to admit, they haven't lived up to their end of the bargain. Sometimes we screw up. I screw up sometimes, and you got to hit it head on and tell the kid, hey man, I messed up. It is what it is. And we got to make the best out of this, out of this situation that we've got. And then I'm going to make sure that you're good moving forward. But right now, this is where we are.
Hurtful versus harmful. That's very good. I got to work on that with my wife. It's sometimes I can't find that balance properly. So I appreciate the insight there. Let me ask you this. I saw this quote from you a few months ago about NIL, and I'm curious for you to expand on it because, I think you've probably put a lot of thought into this, being a guy that loves college basketball, that knows you're going to be in it for a long time. But, you were kind of asked about NIL, and you said with my buddy Mincy there, you said everybody acts like the best teams are always going to get the players. But to me, there are a couple factors. One, you got to have the money. Then, two, you've got to be able to have the relationship to get the right players with the money that you have. And three, you've got to have a sense of how it all fits together. Would just be curious, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but it was an interesting comment that I think caught a lot. I don't think it caught people off guard, but it's just, again, I don't think many coaches are willing to have the honest conversations about where we are, where this thing's potentially going, and how it all fits together. Would just be kind of curious for you to expand on what you said with Mincy.
I mean, I think the point of it is it's not just whoever has the biggest bag all the time. Look, you've got to have money. There's a certain level of money you've got to have to compete at whatever level you're at, whether that's the Southland, the Sun Belt, Conference USA, or, the Big 12. I mean, there's certain, but if you look at it, the teams that spend the most money, they're all on not all, but a lot of those guys are on the bubble right now. Look, having money doesn't solve all the issues. One, you got to have the money. There's a team, I'm not going to say the team, there's a team that couldn't give away their money this year. They couldn't give it away. They're in the bottom 4 of their league right now. They're in a power conference league. They had a ton of money. They still got a ton of money sitting in the bank. They couldn't give it away to people. They were offering freshmen to reclassify in the fall. I mean, they were doing all sorts of stuff. They couldn't give it away.
Wow.
My point is, one, they had all the money, but they didn't have two, which is the relationships. You still got to have relationships where people trust you. People trust that you're going to do right by who they, I mean, look, the money part of it's the money part of it. But, I'll use Alabama as an example. Alabama doesn't have a top 5 roster in the SEC in terms of what they spent money-wise. All right? Not what they spent money-wise. Now they got a top 5, they got a top 2 or 3 roster, in terms of players. But what they spent financially, it's not top 5 or 6 in that league. But they've got relationships, they've got players that want to play there because of the style of play. They've got some other things working in their corner. If you don't have the relationships, if I go to you and you've got, a 5-star and a 4-star, let's call it that, and I've got $2 million and I don't have a relationship with you and I call you about the 5-star, you're going to talk me into taking the 4-star with the $2 million.
Sure.
And because you're good at what you do. And and then the coach is going to talk himself into that too. And I think as coaches too, and I know, like, you got to be willing to say no. You got to be able to walk away from stuff. Like, you place a value on something. This is what I'm going to do. And hey, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, there's so many other people out there. But if you don't have the relationships, you're just going to get the second or third player from that same person or program or agent or whoever it is. They're going to sell you on something else, and you're just going to pay more for a worse product. And so that's how you waste some of the money. So you've got to have the money, you got to have the relationships, and then you've got to, this is an area where I struggle. Like, it's not a talent grab.
Sure.
You've got to be able to fit you got to get 3 parts, and then you got to fit 5 pieces around the parts.
Sure.
You got to get 3 main parts to roll with, and then you got to have 5 pieces, and that's tough. I mean, somebody like myself, I see somebody go in, I'm like, oh, I love him. I'm like, well, we already got him. Sure. I gotta chill out. So you've got to be able to have discipline and understand how all the parts and pieces are gonna fit together. And I think if you've got all 3 of those components, you've got really, really good team. I'll use Alabama again as an example. You look at Auburn and what they've done. You look at someone like Iowa State. They're doing it on limited resources at Iowa State. Even Houston. I mean, their stuff. They grow from within. And I know for a fact, some of their kids were offered way more money and have stayed there. And have stayed there or go there for less money just because of the situation. So I mean, you've still got to have stuff that's attractive. It's just a different level of attraction and recruiting. I mean, there's kids that'll still go somewhere for $300,000 versus $500,000 somewhere else, just because it's a better program. They got better, they got better mechanisms. They got better standards within their program, and so you still have to have all that. I think that gets lost in the well, this guy needs more money. Okay, yeah, they do need more money, but that doesn't solve everything. It can create more problems if you're not careful.
Let me ask you this, because again, you're a guy that's thought a lot about this probably. And I think you're just a good person to ask this. Like, where do you think NIL is going? Because obviously we have this thing coming where schools can pay players, we call it rev share, whatever. And I'm not an economist or a lawyer, but it feels like to me, yes, there's a cap, but again, how do you stop somebody who wants to, for true name, image, likeness? I mean, it doesn't have to be a Nike or an Adidas or whatever. It could be a car dealership. If somebody wants to pay, you can't pay. So anyway, enough about me and my ramblings. Like, what do you think NIL looks like 5 years from now? Like, what do you think the budget's going to have to, or do you think it's just going to be, hey, it's handled internally by the schools, da 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 da?
Well, I think the problem that's going to surface is they're trying to.
I don't want you to get in trouble. So no.
Okay. I'm trying to. No. I'm not. I'm not worried about that. Okay, I think that the problem that's getting ready to surface is with the House settlement. You look at, most schools are going to give 15% to men's basketball, which is, let's call it $2.5–3 million, right? There's a lot of schools spending more than $2.5–3 million right now. So you're basically capping the market. And then you're going to go into these true NIL deals, and you're going to go through a clearinghouse. And I do think they've got their stuff together for everything I've heard, I think the clearinghouse has their stuff together. I think they've got the right intentions on that. But, my assumption is they're going to get sued to high heaven by these kids and their attorneys and their agents, because they're basically trying to cap the market again. So the short answer is none of this is changing until there's collective bargaining. And, I think that there's got to be some level of collective bargaining, or it's just going to keep ending up in court, and it's just going to keep going. But, the rev share is good, but, the rev share is less than what a lot of schools, I'd say probably over half of the schools, are spending right now. So now that, the rev share should have come first.
Sure, of course.
That should have come first. And then they could have, if it had been red share with real NIL, everybody'd be fine. But they fought, the NCAA, everybody fought rev share. No, we're not doing rev share. We're not sharing with the kids. We're going to keep the money so we can, whatever, build a new pool or whatever it may be for training. But now that they have the NIL, and now they're trying to put it back in and go back to rev share, you're taking opportunity away in a lot of respects. And I think that's going to be very, very difficult. I think that's going to be very, very difficult I think it's going to be very, very difficult to defend when kids challenge that, when they don't like that their $10,000 NIL deal doesn't get approved. I think that's going to be a tough stance to take, and we'll see where it goes. But the short answer is, until there's collective bargaining, nobody knows what's going to happen. Like you have to be able to collective bargain, and I'm not talking about every sport, but I mean football and men's basketball particularly need to be able to collective bargain, and then set the caps and go to work. But I do think the idea is good, what they're trying to do. I think the execution is going to be good. I think they've thought through all this. I think Deloitte, I think they've gone through all this. I think they're pretty thorough with this. I think the reporting mechanisms are going to be good. But I just think that the kids now know, the kids now know what the market is.
Yep.
Before this, nobody really knew the market. Now the market's out there. Everybody knows kind of the market. And so it's going to be hard to readjust and shift down the market when it's already shifted into high gear. And I think we're naive if we think that the players, and now that they're allowed to have agents, and agents are usually tied in with it. If they're just going to sit there and take it sitting down, that that the market's got a cap on it. I think that's going to be tough. Now we'll see what the House settlement. The judge, she can approve it as is, or she can approve. There's some talk. She may just approve the back pay portion of it, and some of the moving forward stuff she doesn't really want to. She may not want to get into. So we'll see. But without that's why the NCAA and everybody's always lobbying for Congress. Without congressional help and some sort of exemption for them, where they can basically, the exemption would be basically they can break the law, but without some sort of help or some sort of compromise there, boy, it's going to be tough moving forward.
All right, we got into Congress and a lot of serious stuff here. Let's just go ahead and wrap a couple quick things. First of all, yeah, I know. I didn't know we were gonna go quite that deep. I knew. I was gonna, it was gonna get serious, but I didn't know it was gonna get quite into Congress and all that. So, a couple things. One, guys are rolling. Obviously, you got a couple more regular season games. You got the Southland tournament. It's at your place. Just really, it's the easy cliche to ask at this time of year, but how do you keep it going? How do you get back into that bracket of 68? And I know last year was disappointing. You get Gonzaga, you're playing well, but it's a single, one and done and you're out. And I mean, how do you just keep this momentum going, hopefully into the tournament? Don't want to jinx anything, knock on wood, and then have success once you get there.
Yeah, I mean, look, the number one goal at this level is to get to the tournament. And so we've done what we can do to this point, which is position us as well as we can to win our conference tournament. We got the 1 seed. We're playing at home. We got to play 2 games. Now we got to go do it. The teams we're playing are much better, as I went over before. And so now we've got to go. Now we've got to go make it happen. And then once you get to the NCAA tournament, man, it's all about matchups. Like Gonzaga was the worst possible matchup. Like I went through our roster. Like we're small.
Yeah.
I mean, we're small. Like, I could go get a 7-footer, but like I could play him in 2 games in our league.
Sure.
So like, I mean, the number one goal is to win the league. So like our center 6'6", our 4-man's 6'8", our backup center 6'8", 6'9". Like, I mean, we're not huge. I mean, my backup 4-man's 6'5". Like we're not big because that's what works to win in our league. And so, if we, when we play, if we play a team that's got a big center and they got guards who don't turn the ball over, that's a bad matchup for us. And that was exactly what Gonzaga did. So, it's really, I look at it like winning the lottery. The more opportunity, the more tickets you buy, the more opportunities you have, the better chance you got to win. So we got to keep winning, get a good, try to get in and get a good seed. And the more often you get the good seed, gives you an opportunity to win.
Real quick, I actually meant to ask this earlier, and it's the question I think a lot of people want to know is like, you talked about communication back and forth with your players. I mean, obviously your name gets linked to a lot of stuff this time of year. How do you handle that, or do you not handle it? Do you not address? I mean, because it's impossible.
Oh, they're all aware. You can't not address it. I mean, they all know, and they ask me about it, and I tell them what's going on. I tell my staff. We had a staff meeting this morning. I tell them, hey, this is what it is. I don't tell them specifics.
Sure, of course.
I tell them, hey, here's where it is. And my staff's a little different because they trust that, I'm going to handle it and take care of everybody and everything. And so there's not a lot there. And, I'm not a big guy. I don't talk to a lot of people. I don't tell a lot of stuff. If you tell one person, it's no longer a secret. So,
Sure.
Nobody really knows what's going on. But with the players, I'm open and say, hey, look, here's, there could be opportunities. Here's what it is. A lot of them it goes back to, well, what about me? And so, I've been having those conversations with guys since January. Hey, this is what it is. And this is where I see you next year. And, here are options. And so, we hit all that stuff head on, and there's no need to run and hide from it.
I'm not going to, put you on a spot here, but I know you love McNeese. I know you're not in a rush to leave. What would you be looking for? Like, because we talk about where college sports is going, where it isn't, where it is, where it might be. Like, what would just like from an administrative or whatever? I mean, is there anything specific if you were to seriously consider leaving McNeese that you need to look for?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've moved around a lot. I'd like to, when I leave here, if I leave here, I'd like to go somewhere where I can stay 10 or 12 years.
Sure.
You're
still a young guy. That's not that long.
I know, if I don't wear out my welcome.
10 or 12 years.
I mean, look, I've got it.
70s, man.
I've got it so good here with our school president and with our athletic director that, that makes a huge difference. I've had it where, those guys are not as supportive of you. And I've had it where those guys are very supportive of you at various spots that I've been. And I've never had better or more support from both than I have here. And it makes a world of difference. We get a lot of the credit for turning it around. There's a whole team that turned this thing around. It's not just me. It's not just us, our staff. Like, there's a lot of people that went into making this thing work. And so, early on in my career, I probably thought I could just do all that myself and I'd just be a force of nature and we'd figure it out and, whatever it may be. I now have a much clearer understanding of everything that it takes to really, really win at the highest level that you need to win at. And so that's something that I evaluate because, reality is at McNeese, we're better than a lot of power conference teams right now. You go look at KenPom, we're ahead of at least a dozen of them right now, more than that. So we can do it here. We can keep this thing rolling for a long time. And like you said, my family loves it here. I got tremendous administration and we've got a great setup. And so I'm in no rush to just run out the door. But if certain opportunities were to present themselves, you certainly have to listen. But what McNeese has done for me and my family's just incredible, and I love it here, and I'd like to keep it rolling here as long as we can.
Well, I think you know this, but I spoke on a panel with your AD, who's just a badass. He's just awesome, man. I was with Heath in about 3 months ago, and he's the best. And so I could see why it'd be fun working for that guy every day. I think I'll let you go. One last thing, and I'll let you go. Your student manager. Did you see your student manager go crazy? I know you're not on social media anymore.
I did.
Go ahead.
Reed, my special assistant, I was with him all day yesterday. We had to go. We were traveling, and he was showing me all the stuff. And Amir's, it's awesome. I mean, he's like that every day. He's got a great personality, tremendous kid, and pretty cool to see. But it takes everybody to run a program. Everybody in your program is important. Our managers, all those guys are important. I mean, we're at a small school. We don't give money for managers. Those guys do it for nothing. I mean, I got them courtside seats to a Pelicans game last year to think of. I mean, that was all they got for the year. was they went. Told them to choose a Pelicans game at the end of the year, and they went and sat courtside. That was it. And so to see him get recognized, and our players love him. Everybody loves him in the program, and it's been cool to see.
All right, well, Wade, it's a busy time, man. You gave me so much time. I genuinely probably asked 2 or 3 too many questions, but you're too nice to cut me off here. So I appreciate you. The cliche, but best of luck, man. The rest of the season. We'll be watching McNeese. I told you last year. I think everybody loves your story, loves the McNeese story, and so we'll all be watching, man. I appreciate the time. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. Let me adjust the camera really quick. All over the place. Hold on. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. All right, so we don't do a Friday show, which means that right now, first of all, let me even backtrack. Thank you to Will Wade. That was awesome, man. And first of all, any coach giving me 25, 30 minutes at this time of year, I'm incredibly grateful for. They just clinched their league title. He's got a lot on his plate. And I genuinely appreciated his time. I appreciated his transparency, talking about, hey, this is where NIL is. This is where it's going. I love McNeese, but this is the job, da-da-da-da. So I bring it up because Coach Wade was great. McNeese will be the number 1 seed in their conference tournament on their home courts, and they will again be a threat to do damage if they do win that Southland Conference tournament. So I really appreciated his support. By the way, I appreciate everybody else's support live on YouTube. We had a lot of people sit through the entire interview. I know attention spans are short, time is thin, so I appreciate everybody who stuck through that. With that said, though, let's go ahead and wrap the show by talking a little bit about what should be a very fun weekend in college basketball. As I said, there is 2 full weekends left to college hoops before we get to conference tournaments, before we get to the NCAA tournament. So let's go ahead and dive in. Saturday, I was thinking, I don't think there's any real games on Sunday to preview. Anyway, I'm rambling. I just talked to Will Wade for a half an hour. So let's go ahead and wrap with the Saturday slate. Should be a fun slate. Let's start with, talk about a big one. Number 1 Auburn going to Rupp Arena. This is a Saturday afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern game on ABC. We are recording before there's any point spread, anything like that. My guess is that Auburn will be probably a 4.5 point favorite. But let's go ahead and dive in. So first of all, Rupp Arena should be rocking for this game. I looked it up on Thursday morning. Get-in price is already close to like $200. And that's on Thursday morning. So by Friday night into Saturday, this could be the hottest ticket that we've had at Rupp all year. I remember Florida was a huge ticket. Alabama was a huge ticket. This one should be no exception. And I think we're going to get a good game between 2 teams that I like them a lot. From the Auburn side of things, we talked about Kentucky, Oklahoma. Auburn destroyed Ole Miss on Wednesday night. And it's kind of funny. I was thinking about this, is that, they beat Alabama a few Saturdays ago. They play Georgia at home. They don't play great. They play Arkansas at home. They don't play great. And I do tend to wonder if they started hearing that noise, people like myself, people in the media saying, oh, maybe Duke's better. Houston's playing pretty well right now. And Auburn's like, let's just beat a top 25 team by 30 just to remind everybody who we are, what we're about, and how good we are. So Auburn obliterated Ole Miss. Kentucky, to their credit, took care of business against Oklahoma. We talked about that game earlier in the show. But listen, it wasn't always pretty. But again, how can you blame Kentucky? You're moving guys in and out of the lineup. Lamont Butler's back. Then he's not. Now he's back again. Jackson Robinson comes back. He plays. He gets hurt in this game again against Oklahoma. And so, we obviously don't have any injury updates. I assume Lamont Butler will be good to go. I assume Jackson Robinson will not be good to go. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and take the Auburn Tigers to go to Rupp Arena and win. That's not an indictment on Kentucky. That's not an indictment on they're overrated, they're this, they're that. The truth of the matter is that Auburn, they're just insane. And you look at the places that they have already won this year at SEC play. This is obviously a team that has played a bunch of very big road games against some very good teams. And they, for the most part, have not missed a beat. Beat Ole Miss at Ole Miss earlier this year. That's an NCAA tournament team. Won at Texas. This is a team that also throughout the year, as we saw a few games ago, destroyed all Alabama at Alabama when Alabama was ranked the number 2 team in the country. So Auburn's not afraid of a big road environment, but also I just think this is a bad matchup for Kentucky. Kentucky, they're not super big down low. They don't have a bunch of size. They don't do necessarily well with really physical teams in the paint. Amari Williams, as I said, kind of banged up his ankle. He was fine because he came back in that game against Oklahoma. But you talk about an Auburn team with Chaney Johnson, with Janai Broome, with all of those guys down low, that just feels like a tough matchup for Kentucky in this game. And so I do think that Auburn ends up winning. I'll say final score like 87-81. I don't think Kentucky gets blown out. I think it's tough. I think it's physical. But I do think that Auburn will find a way to get the win. By the way, producer Matt is in my ear telling me last time Auburn won at Rupp Arena, January of 88. So we will see if they can get the job done. By the way, the other big note here is that an Auburn win and an Alabama loss would give Auburn the outright SEC title. Alabama we'll get to in a minute. But if Auburn wins this game, they will essentially have clinched the SEC title. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this is a big one. Rupp Arena. It's going to be crazy. I'm jealous to any of you who will be there, but I do like Auburn to get the win. We just mentioned Alabama. They will go to the place that I call Thompson Bowling Arena. Now, they call it the Food City Center now. I'm sure Food City is paying a lot of money to have their name on that building. It will always be Thompson Bowling to me. But Tennessee hosting Alabama. By the way, Alabama's final 3 games at Tennessee, Florida at home, at Auburn. Like, you could have, listen, I talked about it with my buddy Ryan Fowler on his show on Wednesday, but it's like, you could look at it as 2 ways. One, that is an insane stretch. The counter to that is, and I know this is what Nate Oates is selling his team, all of our opportunities are right in front of us. You go 3-0, you go probably 2-1 in that game, and you don't, in that stretch, and you don't take a terrible loss at the SEC tournament, you're going to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So, at Tennessee, Florida at home, Alabama finishes the regular season at Auburn. And it's just, it should be a really fun game. It should be an entertaining game. And I'll say this, it's going to sound weird. I think it's a game featuring 2 teams that I think are still, as weird as it sounds, trying to figure themselves out, which sounds crazy because we are now in the last day or so of February into March. But with Tennessee, again, it's funny. I was on radio in Knoxville earlier this week, and I was on with my buddy Russell Smith. And basically, we talked about the fact that, like, I think Tennessee, it's hard to know what to expect from them because they're 2 different teams. When Chaz Lanier is cooking, they are as good as any team in college basketball, maybe outside of Auburn. When Chaz Lanier is not cooking, they can lose to just about anybody. I think the last 2 games are kind of reflective of that, right? Chaz Lanier goes for 30 at Texas A&M. Tennessee wins at Texas A&M. It's a great game. Chaz Lanier struggles. I think he had 13, 14 points against LSU, didn't shoot the ball well. It was a 6-point game. LSU had a chance to win it, and Tennessee had to rely on their defense. So it's a game that I think we're going to find out, like, Can Tennessee get consistency from Chaz Lanier over the next month? If they can get back to the Elite Eight. They can get to their first Final Four. If they don't, they're probably a team that Sweet 16 is probably their ceiling based entirely on their defense. Alabama's the opposite. Alabama has no problem putting the ball in the basket. The defense has not been good enough, but to their credit, maybe starting to figure things out. Certainly coming off probably their best back-to-back games of the SEC season. They beat Kentucky at home last week, a game against Kentucky where, again, with Alabama, started out slow, didn't look good. Then it was like midway through the first half, just flipped a switch, kicked Kentucky's butt, and ran away with it. And then you talk about kicking butt and running away with stuff. I'm not great at math. 111-73 win against Mississippi State. If that math is correct, that's a 38-point win over an NCAA tournament team. So Alabama is, I think, quietly figuring themselves out. And I'll do this. I will pick Alabama to pull off the upset. I think it'll be an upset. We don't have a point spread yet as I'm recording here on Thursday afternoon. I think Alabama finds a way to win this game. Alabama, to me, I still think their ceiling is as high as anybody, maybe not named Auburn. I don't know if they're consistent enough to do it for 6 straight games. But when they come in on the road, hostile environment, I think that this is a game that they get the win. I don't want to say it could get ugly, but I mean, if they start making shots, I mean, they could win this one going away. I will say that Tennessee's defense does enough to keep it close. I will say 80-60. I'll say 80-71 final score. Alabama gets the win. Tennessee's still a good team, but I think Alabama at its best is as good as anybody. By the way, you talk about the schedule just breaking nice for the SEC. We knew in the preseason that Auburn and Kentucky would probably be a big game. We knew that Tennessee and Alabama would be a big game. I don't think anybody had Florida and Texas A&M. This game is in Gainesville as a top 15, top 20 type matchup late in the season. By the way, shout out to the schedule makers. Texas A&M playing the last game on the SEC Network, so they can't screw up the schedule this time. But this game is at the O-Dome, 8:30 Eastern time. I'll be real. I think Florida wins. I think they win convincingly. We don't have a point spread yet, but this will be my best bet of the weekend, barring something shocking. Bottom line with A&M, I know they've lost 2 straight, but Florida is also coming off a loss as well. And so when I look at Florida, they're going to be as motivated as A&M is. If they were on an 8-game winning streak, maybe they're not as fired up, but they're fighting for a number 1 seed. They're fighting for that double bye in Nashville at the SEC tournament. And then beyond that, I also just think it's a bad matchup for A&M. A&M, as we've discussed time and time again, physical, tough, great defense or great rebounding team, especially on the offensive glass. You know who is as good rebounding as Texas A&M? It's the Florida Gators. We've talked about Florida all season long. They got a bunch of, skinny dudes that hang out on the perimeter that you don't think they're great rebounders. They are a great rebounding team. And so in my opinion, this one, it just feels like 2 teams that want to do kind of the same thing, but Florida is way better at it at all 5 positions. I like Florida to win this one going away. I'll say 84-68. Florida wins. Florida dominates. Really quickly, let's go to the Big 12. Top 25 matchup. Number 22, Arizona. Number 9, Iowa State. This is another one. Late night game, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central time. So Hilton Coliseum is going to be rocking. Is Hilton Coliseum going to have some Hilton magic? That's a big question because Hilton Coliseum kind of needs some Hilton magic because Iowa State ain't playing very well, okay? So they lost a few games ago in a game where they had both of their top scorers out with injury. That was obviously Curtis Jones as well as Keyshawn Gilbert. So they lose 2 games ago last week at Houston. No shame in that. Then they go on the road to Oklahoma State, who is not very good, currently sitting at 14th in a 16-team SEC in a Big 12, and they lose at Oklahoma State as well. Now, the good news is Curtis Jones did come back. The bad news is Keyshawn Gilbert is still out. We don't know if Keyshawn Gilbert will be back. Arizona, on the other hand, listen, the polls are what they are. They're not the 22nd best team in college basketball. To their credit, they kicked the crap out of Utah. They're playing well. I know the stat sheet will tell you they lost 3 of their last 5. 1 was to Houston, no shame in that. 1 was the controversial ending against BYU. I had no problem with the foul call. Doesn't change that it was a controversial ending. Kansas State was playing well when they lost him as well. So I think Arizona is actually playing very well, all things considered. Look at this game. It's going to be physical. It's going to be tough. I do like the Wildcats. I just think the Wildcats are a little bit of an underrated team. I don't think they get enough credit for how well they've been playing first year in the Big 12, handling the physicality, handling the toughness. And listen, Caleb Love, it's a gift and a curse. He has his moments. He has his highs. He has his lows. But 27 against BYU, 23 against Utah, pretty efficient in both games as well, which I think is key. I still think Arizona, they're going to end up on the 3-4 line, something like that. They are a dangerous team. By the way, kind of worth noting as well on this, Arizona alone in second place. Texas Tech is playing at Kansas on Saturday. So if Kansas can get the win, we know Kansas hasn't been playing well. Arizona would have a 2-game lead for second place in this league. If Arizona loses, or if Texas Tech beats Kansas, well, if Texas Tech beats Kansas, Arizona loses, then we would have a 2-way tie for second place. So this is kind of important again for seeding, etc. All right, I'll tell you what. Shows at hour 30 live. Now, we did do 30 minutes with Will Wade, but I'll tell you what. Do think it is time for me to get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, do your boy a favor. Do Torres a favor. Please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, please make sure to subscribe. By the way, we got some great questions in the chat. Sorry we didn't get a chance to get to all of them, but we appreciate your support. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All for today's show. Time for me to get out of here. Really do appreciate your support. By the way, we'll be back Sunday. Probably stick with the Sunday night schedule, but we'll see because there's not a lot of big games on Sunday, but let's plan for Sunday night. Time for me to go. Shout out to Torn Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick. You F-head. Unblock me, bro. I will be back Sunday.